أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين أبي القاسم محمد والصلاة والسلام على أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المنتجبين، سيما بقية الله في الأراضين حجة ابن الحسن العسكري عجل الله تعالى فرجه الشريف. صلوات الله واللعن الدائمة على أعدائهم أجمعين من الآن إلى قيام يوم الدين. This is the last session and the last lecture to do with this ayah that is with the end of life of Imam Hussain alayhi salatu wassalam on the day of Ashura. We decided to speak about various aspects of the ayah, and there are certain aspects remaining. أيتها النفس المطمئنة ارجعي إلى ربك راضية مرضية. راضية مرضية is something that we're going to discuss tonight, inshallah. We haven't touched upon that much. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created man for a purpose, created human beings for a purpose. There is a hadith from Imam Baqir alayhi salatu wassalam that says, هل الإيمان إلا الحب? What is Iman? What is faith apart from love? There's another hadith, الدين الحب والحب الدين وهل الدين إلا الحب. Religion is love, love is religion. Another hadith, هل الإيمان إلا الحب والبغض. Love and hate, they make up Iman. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving us the clues, the pieces in the puzzles to put together, that if you want to become complete, then you have to have this loving relationship with your Creator. You have to have this relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that you're both in love with one another. When you see someone that is in love, how do you know that they're in love? One of the ways that you know they're in love is that they see what they want to see, not what other people see. A person that loves does not love a perfect person, but love makes that person become complete in their eyes. Love removes the imperfections of the other person. Imperfection exists, no one is perfect. But in the eyes of the lover, the imperfections disappear. When a person loves, they breathe, they eat, they sleep. Their heart beats with that love. A mu'min loves for the sake of Allah and hates for the sake of Allah, not for the sake of himself. A mu'min can love his partner, wife, can love her husband. The husband can love his wife, but for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And hatred to be for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not for the sake of dunya. Iman is love. What does that mean? Faith is love. What does it mean? Religion is love. What does it mean? What is love? Well, first of all, there isn't one explanation for love. Every philosopher, every thinker, Everyone you can think of has a different definition of what love is. No one knows. There isn't a definite bracket that love falls into. And as man progresses, his definitions will progress with him. But there are certain things that we can extract. I told you previously that with regards to knowledge, there is two types of knowledge. Who remembers? We said ilm is divided into two parts, ilm al-husuli and ilm al-huduri. There is a one type of knowledge that you are born with. There is another type of knowledge that you gain as you grow. The type of knowledge that you are born with is the sort of knowledge about your existence. You know you exist. You didn't have to learn it. The type of knowledge that you grow when you learn is that fire burns. Love has two parts. There is a love that we are born with, certain things we love. There is a love that comes later on. Just as to begin with, we have in our hearts the belief that there is a God. There is a faith inside every single one of us. Because there is a faith that is created with the soul, there is also love that's created with the soul. So love splits into at least these two parts. The love that we have in our hearts for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for example. That's a love that we have. There is a love for the relatives. Comes later on. At the beginning, you don't know who your relatives are. And as you grow, depending on which of your uncles, which of your siblings, which of your family show you more affection, you show more affection back. Humans work this way. Humans, if they feel love from someone, they give back love. If they feel hatred from someone, they give it back. In fact, there is a hadith that says, if you want to know if someone around you, one of your friends, one of your family members, how much they love you, what they feel about you, look at your own heart. From how much you love them, you can see how much they love you. And if you don't love them at all, then you know your answer about their love towards you. Because usually there is a direct relationship of how we give love and how we take it back. So the first part is the love that we are born with, that we have no control over. There is the second layer of love, which is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows us to grow, to change it, mold it in whichever way we want to. If we want to be the nafs al-radiyya maradiyya that goes into fadkhuli jannati, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks in the Holy Quran, then that love is for the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We love the person that is our mother because of having fed us, having clothed us, having taken care of us. Fine. But if that same mother goes against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we go against him. In some of the battles at the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, there was a man, there was more than one instance where the father was with the Prophet fighting against enemies. Sorry, the son was with the Prophet. The father was fighting against the Prophet. In a war, you had a son raising a sword against the father. Because his love is for the sake of Allah. If the father goes against Allah, if the father goes against the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he will take a sword. That is true love. It doesn't matter if they're related. Doesn't matter what they are. At the end of the day, what matters is that faith that I have to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. My allegiance is to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Everything else is secondary. If you pay allegiance to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then you can come into that love. Just as my hatred is for the enemies of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if you fall into the enemies of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I cannot love you. If I do, then I would not have completed my iman. This iman that is of love. Now there are people in challenges where shaitan allows them to think that this is the right path. So it creates a picture, whereas the reality is different to that picture. So they have something in their mind that this is what I must do and give my entire being to. In reality, it's something else. And by the time they wake up, it's too late. We see in history many different circumstances in which people decided to go with shaitan or go towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The nafs that we talked about yesterday is related to this love. Because this fight between the intellect and the shahwa and the lust and desires is a fight that's ongoing until the grave. Until the very last moment that we are on earth, shaitan will try to fight us. Why did shaitan begin his fight against humans? In the Holy Quran, what did it say? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, do sajda to Bani Adam. Aba wastakbar. He denied Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and did not act on his order because of what? Because of his arrogance. Takabbur. Ghurur. He was not able to do it. He said, you created me from fire and you created him from clay. Automatically, when he did this, he broke that love with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because shaitan had been someone that was close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. For thousands of years he was praying. Inshallah, if we have in the future some time, we can go into this in more detail and explain. Allah is just. Shaitan said, for the prayers that I've had for thousands of years, I want something in return. Allah says, I will give you something in return. What is it that I'm going to get in return? You're going to get in return what you want. What is it that you want? He said, I want to be created the same number as man. My children, you create every time you create man. And I'm with them everywhere. I am in their veins. When they move, I move with them. Every second I'll be able to trick them. Allah said, you have it. In their brains, you're there. In their hearts, Allah said no. The heart of a mu'min is the haram of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There you have no access to. The love of a mu'min for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is something that shaitan cannot get into. That's why you find that so many people eventually find their way and they seek repentance from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because the heart is still there, the ability to love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is still there. We can love humans as well as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But the love for the humans should be in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When you choose a spouse for yourself, either shaitan can make you blind through love or what you think is love, or true love in the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for the sake of Allah, can truly open your eyes to what spouse you choose. Because you choose a spouse not for pleasure and dunya only. Yes, pleasure is good, dunya is fine, but your spouse is someone that will help you go up to the steps that we've been talking about for the last 5 nights. To reach that end conclusion of being in love with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and being the one that enters the Jannah and the heaven of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You can choose a spouse by beauty. If you choose by beauty, then you don't love them. If you love, then the imperfections become what you love them for. For you, they're perfect. If you love your spouse, there is no imperfections. If you love them for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and if you love them because they get you closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you chose them for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, every second the malaika and the angels will be with you writing thawab for you. There is nothing wrong with love, but it's to be for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not for the sake of shaitan. A person who is loved can never be alone. A person who is loved can never be depressed. If we feel the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in our hearts, then we're never alone. We are alone when we feel no love. We feel that we are not loved by anybody. Every human needs a spouse in dunya, by the way. You're incomplete unless you become married. There are two halves to every human, male and female. We complete one another. So loving another person is not against Islam. Talking about love is not against Islam. I'm telling you that your Imam, the Imam that is the person who gives you divine wisdom, tells you that your faith is love, your deen is love, your religion is love. So don't shy away from this. Instead, go towards it with both arms in the right direction. If we are the lovers of Imam Hussain alayhi salatu wassalam, then our hearts are free from shaitan. We see properly. Our love is for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah can put the love of the right people in our heart. You look through history, you see many people make mistakes, and many people make the right decisions. Look at the Holy Quran and the stories in the Holy Quran. There are plenty. I'm going to pick one for tonight and maybe one for tomorrow night. The story of Musa alayhi salatu wassalam and how he was born is all to do with love. Every step of it is to do with love. Just as we discussed that some of the wives of the Imam alayhi salatu wassalam killed them for the love of dunya, for the love of shaitan. We've had personalities such as Fir'aun be married to the best of women. There are 4 women who are the best of women. Asiya is one of them. Asiya was the wife of Fir'aun. The reason I'm mentioning this and this story is that Allah can put someone's love into our hearts if He wishes. Through tawassul, you can ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to put the love of the right person in your heart. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put the love of Musa alayhi salam in the heart of Asiya. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put the love of Musa alayhi salam in every woman that saw him to save his life. So Allah has this ability to conquer the hearts of the believers and even the hearts of non-believers. Allah has the ability, because the heart of a mu'min is the haram of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's a very sacred place, this heart. It's a place that Allah has kept away from shaitan for Himself. That keep your love and your heart clean for me, so that you can pass this test, this is dunya, and complete your journey and then come to me. فَارْجَعِي إِلَىٰ رَبِّكَ, come back to me. The ayah says, يَا أَيَّتُهَا النَّفْسِ الْمُطْمَئِنَّةِ ارجعي, come back. Where? So that when you say come back, you must have started from somewhere to go back, correct? So the love starts the moment Allah creates that soul. When your soul was created, Allah began with love. Allah gave you love, hence that soul was created. Now that your journey is completed in dunya, Allah says, come back to me. Allah is waiting for you back. فارجعي نفس المطمئن راضية مرضية. Come back how? Come back in a state that I am happy with you and you are happy with me. Come back in a state of complete iman. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to put true love in our hearts, it's so simple for Him. And humans think they can stop this process. Humans are very fickle at times. We think like shaitan, nastajiru billah, sometimes worse than shaitan, that we have so many powers and we forget the power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Even our hearts, we forget, is in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What goes into our hearts is in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We forget. Pharaoh decided to tell people that he is God. You've read the Quran, you've read history books. Pharaoh said, "Ana rabbukum al-a'la." I am your Lord on top of you. I have all the powers, and he had nothing. One day, they decided to test Pharaoh. They said, "Oh Pharaoh, you say you have these powers because you are God. We want one thing from you. Here's some grapes. Take these grapes and turn them into gold." Very simple for God to do. Take these grapes, make them into gold. Simple, huh? Pharaoh said, okay. He took the grapes, went into the room, closed the door. What is he going to do? He has no powers. He can't do anything. He was walking back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. What is he going to do? The door knocked. Someone knocked on the door. Pharaoh said, "Who is behind the door knocking?" The person behind the door said, "What sort of God doesn't know who is behind the door? What sort of God has to ask who is behind the door?" Pharaoh became upset. He's got men with swords. He says, "I am Shaitan, open the door. I am the devil." Pharaoh opens the door, the devil comes in. Shaitan says, "What's the problem?" He looks at the grapes. He blows onto the grapes. It turns into gold. Shaitan says, "Oh Pharaoh, look at the power that I have. I blew onto the grapes and it became gold. It never crossed my mind to say that I'm God. You have no powers and yet you say that you're God." So sometimes humans think that they are greater than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Or they have these powers and we have nothing. This Pharaoh thought he was God and he thought he could stop the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Every one of you have flown on aeroplanes. Or the majority of you have flown on aeroplanes. You've seen the power of an aeroplane when it lifts off and flies, right? Huh? Can you imagine if a mosquito, and you've all seen mosquitoes, if a mosquito opens its chest and says, "I'm not going to let the plane fly." The mosquito stands in front of the aeroplane and says, "I'm not going to let this fly." What would happen to the mosquito? Sometimes humans are like this. There is a power far, far greater than ours, and we think, "I'm going to stand and stop this," instead of being humble to the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Pharaoh said to the people around him to come and interpret a dream he had. "I'm going to go to the Holy Quran and the tafasir of Ahlul Bayt and give you the English translation." So Pharaoh brought people that would interpret dreams. How would they interpret dreams? In the olden days and even today, there is a way to interpret certain dreams. You can tell what will happen. And also they had the ability to read the skies through the stars. The movement of the stars will tell them things. They came to Pharaoh and said, "Oh Pharaoh, a boy will be born. This boy is going to be born imminently. When he is born, he will take over your throne. He will destroy you and everything that you have built." Now Pharaoh, instead of thinking that if it's Allah's will it will happen, he told his soldiers that every single woman that is pregnant is to be killed. If they have given birth, if it's a small boy, they should be killed. Every single woman that nurses and gives help to the women that are giving birth should be paid a prize so that if a boy is born, they come tell us, we go and kill the boy. History says Pharaoh in this period killed thousands of innocent women and children so that Musa would not be born. This is the example of a mosquito in front of an aeroplane trying to stop it. Pharaoh trying to stop the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He thinks he can do this. So he killed all these thousands of people, and then it was time for Musa alayhi salam. What does Allah do? Look at the beauty of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when He wants to put love in the heart of mu'mineen. What does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala do? Musa had a mother, Yukad is her name, the wife of Imran. She was about to give birth. Naturally, she called a nurse to come assist her. The nurse came. The nurse was one of the spies of Pharaoh, and she was hoping to pick up this prize from Pharaoh. The Holy Quran says, when Musa was born, she took one look at this baby, and the love of Musa went into the heart of this nurse. At that moment, she could no longer do it. She said to Yukad, you know, I was about to go to Pharaoh and tell them about the baby, but now I can't. Now that I've seen the baby, the love of this baby has gone into my heart. I can no longer do this. So you are safe from me. At this point, the people of Pharaoh had followed the nurse to the house of who? To the house of the mother of Musa alayhi salam. They came in, they raided it. The mother of Musa, what did she do? In fear that they will kill her son, she wraps it and put it in an oven. And the oven was full of fire. The soldiers come in. What is this nurse doing here? We follow her to this house. She says, this nurse has come to see me. That's it. There is no baby. They look around, all they see is an oven full of fire. Surely there can't be a baby in there. They leave. As soon as they leave, the mother hears the baby crying. She takes it out. The baby is perfectly healthy. Nothing wrong with it. Now she holds the baby and realizes that there's imminent danger in this baby. So what does she do? If Allah wants something, it will happen. Never think that we can stand in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Holy Quran says, the wahi came to Musa, the mother of Musa, Musa. How wahi comes to the mother of Musa, inshallah tomorrow or the day after we'll discuss. Because wahi is supposed to be for the Prophet and the Prophets, but the Holy Quran says, Musa. She's not a Prophet or an Imam. But she gets wahi from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's in the Holy Quran. Anyway, she's told by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to put the baby in a river. She goes and asks someone to build a small box, a wooden box. She tells her sister, the sister of Musa, her daughter, to follow the box. She leaves the box because the Holy Quran says, don't be frightened. We will take care of Musa. Just put him in the river. She puts the baby inside the box and puts the box inside the river. What happens next? What happens next is that who should find the box from the river? But the wife of Pharaoh, the only person who could rescue this baby. The wife of Pharaoh picks this up, sees the face of Musa alayhi salam. Again, the love of Musa goes into the heart of Asiya. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put the love of Musa in the heart of Asiya. She says to Pharaoh, oh Pharaoh, you've killed all these people. This boy, his love has gone into my heart. If you want to make me happy as your wife, if you want me not to nag you, then let him be. Pharaoh agrees. The person who is the number one enemy of Pharaoh is raised under the roof of Pharaoh by Asiya. Now look at how religious Asiya is. It doesn't matter what atmosphere you live in, whether it's in Toronto or Karbala or Najaf or Qom. If you want to be religious, you can be religious. Asiya lived under the roof of the worst dictator in history, Fir'aun, who claimed to be Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. She kept her iman. When Musa alayhi salam began to show miracles and tell people that I am Kalimullah, I am Nabiullah, I'm the Prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Asiya, the wife of Fir'aun, became a mu'min and believed in Musa alayhi salatu wassalam. What did Fir'aun do? In order to take away the iman of Asiya. This is where intellect and shahwa come. This is where completion comes. This is where the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala comes. If we love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we do not give our iman easily. If we love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it doesn't matter how many of shayateen and the devils exist around us. We will not give in to them. Temptations may be everywhere, but the mu'min's iman is greater than all temptations put together, because we have Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Asiya is under pressure from Fir'aun to give up her religion, give up her deen, give up her love to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. She says, no, do as you will. I believe in Musa and I will do to the last step. What does Fir'aun do to her? He tells his people to put her arms and legs on wood in the middle of the desert and nail them against the wood. Now, if you nail through these, this is a practice that was done in medieval ages. If you put a nail through these, your veins are cut, so you start bleeding. And it's very painful. So they expect Asiya at this point, when she's going through physical torture, to denounce Musa and her religion. And what does she say? She looks unto the sky and she starts speaking to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. She says, "Oh Allah, I am coming to you and I cannot wait for my new home in Jannah." They put a stone on the chest of Asiya, and the hadith say that she carried on speaking to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, telling him that she cannot wait to be with him. This is love. This is true completion. This is radiyatan mardiyya. This is iman. That a woman is tested in every single way. She gives up everything in dunya. Not only she gives up everything in dunya, she gives up her life for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is completion of iman. If we have this completion of iman, then we give our hearts to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We say, Ya Allah, this haram is yours. This haram is yours. Do as you please. Put in my heart what you see is best for me. Take out of my heart what you see that's going to lead me in the wrong path. When we cry and shed tears for Imam Hussain alayhi salatu wassalam, this is one procedure to go towards the completion. This is one of the best ways to go through the ladder, because the heart that loves Imam Hussain alayhi salatu wassalam, the heart that cries for Imam Hussain alayhi salatu wassalam, is that heart that can progress towards love. We hear so much about how the heart can pain. Have you heard this? Heartache? You hear it that people go through heartache. When someone they love or something they love dies, passes away, they have heartache. This is true. It's a medical fact. You actually feel pain in this region when you're that sad. So it's not the case that when we say love and we say heart, it's just a myth that they're connected. No, they're very well connected. Physically, they're connected. If you love someone, you lose them, you have heartache. Physically, you feel pain in your heart. If we have love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the greatest being was killed in the worst way, then surely our hearts would ache for him. For a human to be able to love Not just love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and not just love Ahlul Bayt alayhi salatu wassalam, but to love anything, it has to be selfless. You can't be selfish and love. You can't be selfish and expect to be loved. Because selfishness and arrogance are antidotes against love. If you want someone to love you, you have to give them yourself. If you want someone to love you, you have to be selfless towards them. It's a project that works both ways. It works both ways with male and female, and it works both ways with Allah and us. You cannot expect Allah to give everything your way and put everything the way you want it, yet you have nothing to give back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It doesn't work like that. You have to give your heart to Him. You cannot say, I want to commit all the sins, all the things that are haram, and get the pleasure from shaitan, and at the same time, I want my heart to be yours. Either you give your heart to shaitan or you give your heart to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You cannot have both. And if you give it to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you let Him fill it with what is best for you. You let Him fill it with what is in your interest. Because no one knows what is in your maslahah, what is best for you, than the person who created you, because He knows the future. And He is needless to commit anything against you. So anything that He does is for your good, not Allah's good. One of the best ways to rub off all the black points, one of the best ways to clear this heart for Allah to come in, for the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to come in, to open the doors of our hearts for a brand new start, is what? Tawbah. Tawbah. Tawbah is the number one enemy of shaitan. If you want to start this relationship of love with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and become one of the masadiq of radiyat and mardiyya, and come back to our Lord and show Him that we gave Him love whilst we were alive in this dunya, and we look forward to seeing Him. A mu'min looks forward to seeing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala again. He's not afraid of seeing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If we're afraid of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, how many people here can say they look forward to seeing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And how many people are afraid to see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? If you're in love with Him, how can you be afraid to see Him? If you're in love with Him, everything you've done is for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So what is there to be afraid of? If we're afraid of Him, it's because we know we've made mistakes. We know the haram of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We put black dots on there. But Allah tells us that shaitan cannot get into our hearts. And tawbah, until the last moment that we're alive, can give us a brand new start. A brand new start. It doesn't matter what came before it. A single tear for Imam Hussain alayhi salatu wassalam can remove all the sins that has been committed previous to it, with conditions. If it's haqq al-nas, we have to give haqq al-nas back. If it's haqq Allah, we have to give haqq Allah back. But Allah has given us this restart button that we can press and begin from scratch. We don't know if tomorrow, the night of Ashura, we will be in this majlis or not. We could be dead. We have no idea. There's no guarantees. So let's take this opportunity on this very night, at this very moment, to say to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we want to start a love relationship that never ends, not after we die and not before. That we look forward to seeing the person we love and that we're in love with. I cannot stress how important it is that if we want to fight shaitan, is to break down and cry. Many people are proud, even when I'm reciting the musibah of Abdullah alayhi salam, to shed tears. Why? If you can't shed tears for the most loved being of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what can you shed tears for? What are you made of? What is this heart made of? Of a stone? Who are we afraid of? That the person next to us sees us shedding tears, crying loud? We should be proud to cry loudly. Allah says that I'll bring down blessings and forgiveness for the person that screams and cries. رحم الله تلك الصرخة التي كانت لنا. Sarkha in Arabic is a scream whilst crying. He says Allah forgives a person who screams and cries for Imam Hussain alayhi salatu wassalam. And yet we're afraid to throw down a few tears for Imam Hussain alayhi salatu wassalam. And yet we say if we were in Karbala we would have given our lives. In Karbala we would have given our blood. Yet we're too stingy to give a few tears for Imam Hussain alayhi salatu wassalam. I've run out of time, unfortunately. صلى الله عليك يا أبا عبد الله السلام على أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك عليك مني سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار. السلام على الحسين. On the night of Ashura, Imam Hussain alayhi salatu wassalam took his ashab, told them that tomorrow is the last day that you'll be on this earth. I promise you heaven whether you fight or don't. Anyone that wishes to go back, they're allowed to. No one will follow you. Imam Hussain alayhi salatu wassalam shows them their position in heaven, tells them that every single one of you will be with me in Jannah whether you fight or not. But remember that if you fight tomorrow there is no return, that tomorrow will be the last day of your lives. Some people talk within each other and they say that Imam Hussain thinks that we will leave him. What is it that we've done wrong that he thinks this way of us? Not a single person doubts Imam Hussain. Not a single person turns around. They all pay allegiance to Imam Hussain alayhi salam. On the day of Ashura, one by one they come forward to Imam Hussain. They say their goodbyes and go towards the battlefield. If it's the youngest people, they went forward and they were killed. If there were people like Habib ibn Madahir, whose back was bent that he was so old, he still went through with what he had promised. He killed many of the enemies until Abu Abdullah came next to him. If it was Hur, he went and did his promise and protected the household of the Prophet. And then the Bani Hashim began to fight the enemies. One by one they went towards the battlefield. Ali al-Akbar was the first of Bani Hashim to be slaughtered. There was Qasim, the son of Hassan, the yatim of Karbala. Then there was Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas, the flag bearer of Karbala, which broke the back of Imam Hussain alayhi salatu wassalam. Imam Hussain would go between the shuhada and the tents. Every minute he will go to see one shaheed, take their head onto himself and show them their place in heaven, and then bring them back to the tents for the ladies. One by one Imam Hussain did this until the last moment Abu Abdullah was on his own. He looked around him and there was no one left to go on the battlefield, so he went on to the tents of the ladies for one last time. He went on to the tent of Zainab salamullahi alayha. He said, "Oh sister, I am saying my last goodbyes to you." The women came forward. They said, "Oh Aba Abdullah, before you go on to the battlefield, there is a 6-month-old child of yours. Since this morning, all night long he has been crying. His mother has no milk to give him. Can you go and request some water for this 6-month-old child before you go to the battlefield?" Zainab takes out Ali al-Asghar and gives it to Imam Hussain alayhi salam. Imam Hussain puts on his abba. He does not put on his armor. He puts on the ammama of Rasulullah, his grandfather. He comes barefoot walking. He does not go on a camel or on a horse. The enemy see Abu Abdullah coming barefoot. The enemy see him with no armor. The enemy see him with the ammama of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi. They are confused of what Imam Hussain wants. Imam Hussain holds up this baby, the 6-month-old baby, and it says, "Oh Qawm, oh you people, if you have no patience for me, if you will not give any water to the Ahl Bayt of the Prophet, this child has no sin at the very least, give some water to him." At this point, the army of Umar ibn Sa'd is said to be halved. Half of the people said he is right. What is the crime of the 6-month-old baby? Oh ayyuhan nas, what Imam Hussain did here was to prove a point that this qawm, these people are the most vicious of people. These people would not even think about helping a 6-month-old baby. They could have taken the baby and given it back the next day. They could have taken it back like Imam Hussain said and given it water. Instead, Harmala saw the neck of the 6-month-old baby. He took back the arrow, and the arrow came swiftly onto the throat of Ali al-Asghar. Imam Hussain saw that in between his arms there is a baby moving like a fish outside the water from one side to another. Abu Abdullah's hands became full of blood. He threw the blood onto the skies. He says, "Oh Allah, this is for you. This shahada is for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala." The ahadith say not a single drop of water, not a single drop of blood came back down onto the earth. Abu Abdullah now has a 6-month-old baby to take back to Rabab. What is he going to say to Rabab? He goes back to the tents. There is Zainab and Rabab waiting for water. There is Rabab coming out to see what has happened. What she sees is a headless 6-month-old baby in the hands of Abu Abdullah alayhi salam. Some of the maqatil say that Imam Hussain took this baby and buried it with his own hands. Oh people, do you know why Imam Hussain buried the baby with his own hands? Some of the maqatil say that Imam Hussain buried his 6-month-old son so that Rabab would not see the head of the 6-month-old baby on the spears on the next day. Some of the Maqatil say no. The reason Abu Abdullah took the baby and buried it was because the baby could not take the soul of being under the trample, under the feet of the horses. The horses came on the day of Ashura. They did not want it to be trampled with this beautiful baby. So Abu Abdullah buried this 6-month-old baby. At this time, he left the baby and went to the battlefield. The riwayat say, "Hal min nasirin yansuruni." I have given the last thing that I had, which was my 6-month-old baby. Some of the ahadith say they saw a man coming with a walking stick. It was Imam Zayn al-Abidin. If he hears Abu Abdullah saying, "Hal min nasirin," he cannot stay back. As sick as he was, Zayn al-Abidin goes onto the battlefield. Imam Hussain says, "No, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to keep you safe. The Imam is in your hands after me. Come back." Imam Hussain goes onto the battlefield all alone, and the enemy comes to attack Abu Abdullah. As much as he raises his voice, there isn't a single person to assist the grandson of the Prophet. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله. إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. باسمك العظيم الأعظم عز جل الأكرم يا الله يا الله يا الله يا الله. As we do not have time, we'll recite the dua of Faraj and then the program, inshallah. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. اللهم كن لوليك الحجة بن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. وصلى الله على محمد وآل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين. اللهم صل على محمد.